Thank you for joining me here this afternoon. The time is now 12 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Eastern, and you have a live look at an ongoing tornado warning for portions of the Bayou of Louisiana. Currently, a rotating supercell capable of producing a tornado is located south of Venice. Currently, we're watching this move off to the east-northeast. Again, this is for a very, very, very small portion of the edge of the Bayou of southern Louisiana here. Again, we don't have great radar data out here, so it's kind of hard to see the exact area of rotation that we're watching out for, but it's very likely that it's going to be located somewhere south of Venice along Highway 23. So if you're in this area, seek shelter immediately on the lowest floor of a sturdy building, away from windows and in an interior room. But just remember, very clustery storm mode, probably not going to see too much out of this, but we're going to continue to watch this over the next little while, because I actually wouldn't rule out a couple of tornadoes somewhere today back into portions of the Florida Panhandle. We've got ourselves very high instability values and a discrete storm mode that could lead to the potential for a couple of tornadoes as we go into this afternoon and this evening. Right now, we do have a special weather statement for a cluster of thunderstorms just southwest of Tallahassee. This is warned for damaging winds up to 40 miles an hour and pea-sized hail. So if you're in this area, make sure you are moving indoors immediately. That's going out for Weehawken, I assume that's how you pronounce it, just north of Apalachicola there. And some of these supercells a little bit further off to the west. I wouldn't rule out these merging and potentially intensifying further to the point where they could potentially produce a brief tornado. So again, right now, all of our eyes are going to this tornado warning down here for areas southeast of Venice. I will note that this storm is pretty heavily electrified, which could be a sign of intensification. So again, if you are out here in this area, make sure you are seeking shelter immediately in Pilot Town. This is an area that we actually have covered a few times before, and it's very, very hard because, again, not only do we have poor radar data, but there's not a lot of locations to call out here because it's really a very, very rural area of the bayou. So we're going to continue to watch this over the next several minutes as this continues to move off to the east-northeast. Again, right now your area of circulation is going to be located just south of Pilot Town, moving into Pilot Town over the next several minutes along the Mississippi River. So we'll continue to watch out for that. I appreciate all you guys joining me here this afternoon. I was not actually expecting to go live this early today. I was expecting to go live, but not necessarily at noon. However, this storm managed to develop some rotation and get that tornado warning, so we're here. Again, I appreciate you guys turning in. What's up, Trice, Meteorology Unleashed, Camden, Brody, Dub, how's it going, everybody? Is Hattiesburg in that storm area. So Hattiesburg, Mississippi is going to have the potential for a couple of thunderstorms today, maybe a brief severe thunderstorm, but for the most part, I'd say you're going to have to look out for a flash flooding threat. We're going to be watching this area to see rain all day long on top of what you already saw yesterday, and that could lead to some pretty intense rain totals. In fact, early in the morning here, we've already got ourselves a couple inches of rain accumulating along Highway 49 south of Hattiesburg, so we're definitely going to have that potential to see some localized street flooding in Hattiesburg by the end of the day, so make sure that you do have a flood action plan in place and avoid driving in flooded roadways. We do have a dual slight risk of severe weather today, one of them going out for parts of the southern South Carolina coast back through Orlando, Florida, the other one going out for portions of the mid-Atlantic region. Main thing that we're going to be watching out for today is significant damaging winds, but a couple of isolated tornadoes embedded in a QLCS cannot be ruled out, especially across the east coast of Florida today. But you will know, again, the SPC does have that 2% tornado risk outlined over the far eastern portions of the Gulf Coast here as well. So anywhere from Tallahassee back over to Port Sulphur is where we're going to be watching for a more localized tornado threat over the next couple of hours. But I think as we go later into this evening, the threat over on the eastern coast of Florida here is really going to ramp up quite a bit. And again, if we look back over at the reflectivity, we can see that we are expecting some discrete activity to potentially develop back here in the Orlando region as well, and that could potentially bring the threat for an enhanced tornado risk. So we'll continue to watch this threat over the next several hours. I'm not supposed to be at school. I don't have school on Fridays towards the end of the year, so that's pretty sweet. I am going to go ahead and get the green screen up here, so give me just a second. But again, I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Again, I was not expecting to go live this early today, but here we are. Again, right now, really all we're watching is that one storm with some broad rotation in the Bayou of Louisiana. However, I wouldn't rule out some isolated rotation developing with any of these supercells back in the Florida Panhandle. Again, instability values actually are already quite high out here because it is starting to get to that time of year where you're always going to have high instability down here in Dixie Alley. If we take a look at the surface-based CAPE, we can see that over in the Florida Panhandle, we're dealing with over 3,000 joules per kilogram, anywhere from the Tallahassee region back over to Panama City. So, again, enhanced corridor for a brief tornado threat back here into portions of the Florida Panhandle. Again, the Storm Prediction Center only has that 2% risk going out there, but NATOcast, the AI forecasting tool, actually has a 10% tornado probability going out for sections of the Florida coast. So, again, definitely can't rule out a couple of isolated tornadoes today, and remember, that is a chance of a tornado within 25 miles of any given point. That's not total. So, for example, in that risk, let's say there was Tallahassee and Panama City included in it. That's not what it is for today, but let's just say it was. That would mean Tallahassee has a 10% chance to see a tornado. Panama City would have a 10% chance to see a tornado. Apalachicola would have a 10% chance. It's not just a 10% chance accumulated. It is a 10% chance within 25 miles of any given point. And I think that's something that people forget a lot. They're like, oh, we only have a 10% tornado probability today. Why is that a huge deal? Well, that is actually quite a significant tornado threat. Now, again, it is a very, very hilariously tiny one, and it's by NATOcast. It's not by the Storm Prediction Center, so we're not going to trust it quite as much. But again, even the SPC noting that there may be the potential for a couple of brief tornadoes today somewhere along the Gulf Coast, and I actually wouldn't be shocked if by the 2000Z outlook, that is, they added a 5% tornado probability back somewhere towards the Orlando metro region, as again, some discrete activity and an impressive environment definitely can't be ruled out. And if we take a look at the HRRR model, again, we've got high Cape values out there, and as we go into the afternoon time hours, that is going to skyrocket. I mean, by 4 p.m. here, we're going to be dealing with Cape values anywhere from 3 to 4,000 over back towards the Orlando and Daytona beach areas, and then wind shear is also going to be somewhat impressive. We're going to be talking about 40 knots of shear within the first 6 kilometers of the atmosphere, which isn't anything incredible, but it is enough to bring us a couple of brief tornadoes and especially some big-time hail. So, again, continue to watch this threat over the next several hours. Again, right now, tornado warning going out for portions of the Bayou of Louisiana, south of Venice and Pilot Town. If you're in this area, make sure you are seeking shelter immediately on the lowest floor of a sturdy building, away from windows and in an interior room. Again, this right now, your rotation is going to be located just south of Pilot Town along the Mississippi River. Again, this is kind of the swampy area of southern Louisiana, so there's not a whole lot of population centers out here, but we still do have a couple hundred people included in this tornado warning. So if you know anybody out here in this area, make sure that you do let them know that this is going on, send the stream, because we are legitimately the only channel out here live for this right now. So I'm going to go ahead and share the stream out on the community tab. Again, if you do know anybody out here in Dixie Alley today, make sure that you do the same. Again, we're going to be here for as long as necessary, covering severe weather as well as flash flooding across portions of the Gulf Coast. Again, I think that's something being a little bit underplayed for today. If we take a look at our excessive rainfall outlook here from the Weather Prediction Center, the Climate Prediction Center in particular, you can see that we've got that big old marginal risk of flash flooding. That goes all the way from sections of Louisiana back over towards southern portions of South Carolina. But we also do have a secondary marginal risk for excessive rainfall, meeting flash flooding guidance going out for most of New England. Now, I will note that this is more of an accumulating threat over a few days straight. It's not necessarily, you're going to see 6 inches of rain in one day, but over time, that threat will get bigger and bigger. Again, you can see we've got another marginal risk of excessive rainfall tomorrow for parts of New England, and even yesterday we had a marginal risk for parts of New England. So definitely going to be that chance for some excessive rainfall to accumulate and potentially meet flash flooding guidance over the next couple of days here somewhere in portions of the Northeast. But again, our main focus for severe weather and a tornado threat would be located much further off to the south here, really isolated to portions of the Gulf Coast. So again, let me go ahead and share this stream out here. Give me just a second. Alrighty. So again, I appreciate you guys all joining me here on this lovely, lovely Friday afternoon. Make sure to like and subscribe if you are new. We do this every day for areas all across the country. Is this live? It is indeed. Thanks for being live to keep us safe and help educate us. Thank you for tuning in. Again, I mean, I really, we're probably not going to be here for too long just because we're mainly just watching this broad area of rotation over a very rural area. However, again, I wouldn't rule out a couple of tornadoes later this evening in portions of Florida and maybe even into far southeastern sections of Georgia. But the main area that we're going to be watching for a significant tornado threat would come like from Orlando back over to the Daytona beach area. Again, I wouldn't rule out a couple of photogenic tornadoes either because this is going to be a pretty low precip environment overall, I think. I think that we're definitely going to have to make sure that we do have some eyes eyes on Central Florida because I would not rule out a couple of tornadoes today. Again, taking a look at the significant tornado parameter values, you can see that they're not super elevated, but they are there, and just keep in mind, a lot of that comes down to a lack of wind shear, and wind shear is not necessarily something that you're going to have to need too much in this environment whenever you're dealing with 3,500 to 4,000 joules per kilogram at Cape. I was talking about this yesterday with Levi, and we kind of discussed how after a certain point, it doesn't really matter how much wind shear you have at a certain point. Whoa! Beth with the $50 donation. Wow, thank you so much, Beth. Get some W's in the chat for Beth. Thank you so much for the $50 donation. My goodness, that is incredible. Thank you so much. Again, that is amazing. Beth has been here for a long time, so I really do appreciate that $50 donation. That's incredible. Thank you so much. Again, I appreciate you tuning in, and that's awesome. Again, I really do appreciate that. So thank you so much for the $50 dono. That is amazing. Wow. Again, W's in the chat for Beth. That's incredible. So let's go ahead and throw Beth up there on the top of the donation board. Again, that is incredible. Thank you so much for the $50 donation. I was not expecting that, but that is amazing. So again, thank you so much. Again, thank you for all your support. And again, I really appreciate that. Again, that was not necessary, but I do appreciate it. Again, that is incredible. $50 donation. Thank you so much. But anyway, as I was saying before, I kind of lost my train of thought there. I wouldn't rule out a couple of isolated tornadoes somewhere back into portions of Central Florida today because, again, at a certain point, it doesn't matter if you have enough wind shear or not if you're dealing with, 4,000 or greater Cape. Now, we're not quite at that point in this environment, but we do have a limited amount, but still a certain amount of wind shear out here. So definitely going to be watching out for the threat of a couple of tornadoes today. I think the greatest time frame for a tornado threat would come somewhere from 3 to 6 p.m. across the east coast of Florida. But yeah, huge thank you to Beth for that $50 donation. That is amazing. Wow. That is incredible. So again, I really do appreciate that. Again, thank you so much. That is awesome. Again, donations are not required, but I really do appreciate those of you that do go above and beyond and decide to donate, because it helps out the channel a lot. But again, that's amazing. So thank you so much for the $50 donation. That is incredible. Wow. So give me just a second here. Again, I'm trying to share this stream out with as many people as possible. Alrighty. So, again, I appreciate all you guys for tuning in. Let me know where you guys are watching from, because we are watching everywhere from, again, the Gulf Coast back over to portions of North Carolina and Virginia today, and that's not something I really discussed on too much this far in this stream, but definitely going to be watching out for some significant damaging, oh, that was a bad voice crack, damaging winds out here. Now, I wouldn't rule out a couple of isolated tornadoes into the kind of mid to late evening time hours here, as we are going to be expecting some discrete activity, but overall, I don't think that the environment is super impressive out here. The instability values are going to be a little bit more limited than they are down into portions of Florida. Again, we're going to be talking kind of anywhere from 1,000 to maybe up to 1,500 joules per kilogram at Cape at the maximum, and really that's over areas with water anyways. So again, very, very interesting that they decided to add that slight risk of severe weather out here for portions of the East Coast today, but remember, it's not driven by a tornado threat, it's driven by a damaging wind threat. Again, a 15% chance of damaging wind gusts within 25 miles of any given point of 58 miles an hour or higher, that being severe limit winds anywhere from Virginia Beach back down to portions of northern North Carolina, there parts of the Outer Banks near the Kitty Hawk area. So continue to watch this. Boston, Massachusetts, Detroit, Michigan. So I will say Boston, Massachusetts is going to be somewhat interesting because, again, we're going to be watching for an accumulating flooding threat, and you could be dealing with some thunder showers today. Again, taking a look at the HRRR future track model here, we can see that we are expecting some big-time thunderstorms to make their way through the Boston, Massachusetts area today, mainly just going to bring some heavy rain, some lightning, but that flash flooding threat is really no joke. Again, by the end of the day here, on top of what you've already seen over the past couple of days, we're going to be talking about quite a bit of that accumulating precipitation. Unfortunately, we can't look at that through the HRRR model. I believe we can through the NAM, though. Again, we can on other websites, but on Radar Omega, you can't look at accumulating precipitation. No, you cannot. That's quite unfortunate. But, again, a couple inches of rainfall out there in the Boston, Massachusetts area today. Again, make sure that you are avoiding driving in flooded roadways. You're not technically included in our flood watch, but I would not rule out them extending it over to your region. Again, it all comes down to what each individual National Weather Service office decides to do. Thank you, Crime Crusader from the Covington, Louisiana area. Covington, Louisiana. I know I've heard that name before. That's definitely an area that we've talked about quite a bit. Yeah, so you are out there in our marginal risk of severe weather today, so we are going to be watching mainly for a damaging wind threat and a flooding threat. Again, more than anything else, just some big-time heavy rain and lightning over the next several hours. Again, this is what the future track could be looking like at about 2 p.m. according to the HRRR model, and you're going to see more of those thunderstorms as we go late into tonight, and even into early portions of tomorrow morning, we could be talking about you again. Again, not too much of a tornado threat, but you will notice that there's going to be a somewhat, very, very slightly elevated tornado risk anytime that we do have that discrete activity in your environment. So we will watch out for your area. We've got Rhode Island, Vicksburg, Mississippi. Yeah, I appreciate you tuning in, Crime Crusader. But Vicksburg, Mississippi, we're mainly going to be watching out again just for some rain today, nothing too intense. Rhode Island is, again, pretty similar to what we said for Boston, mainly just going to be a flash flooding threat and a very isolated one at that. We haven't talked really at all yet on tomorrow's threat, but I will say we could be watching out for some isolated damaging winds and potentially a very localized tornado threat across portions of the southeast quadrant tomorrow, specifically in the afternoon to evening time hours there across portions of the Florida Peninsula, potentially back up through sections of southern Georgia, but the SPC currently does have that 2% tornado probability highlighted there for a brief tornado threat across parts of the Florida Panhandle and southwestern Georgia. But again, the main thing that we're going to be watching out for is damaging winds and a couple of large hailstones as well possible tomorrow. Now, we also do have a marginal risk here for day 3, which would be Saturday. Now, I would not rule out this getting upgraded to a slight risk of severe weather, potentially driven by a 15% wind threat or a 5% tornado probability, because our instability values out here are incredibly high. And again, also going to be dealing with a pretty decent amount of wind shear. So anywhere from the Tampa Bay area back over to Jackson, Mississippi on Saturday, make sure that you are prepared and you do have a tornado action plan in place. Now, the severe threat, as many of you probably know, is going to ramp up heavily into portions of the central and southern plains as we go into next week. And we're going to talk about that some more in our next forecast video, but I really, really do think that we could be talking about a pretty significant stretch of active severe weather, really anywhere from the plains back through portions of the Ohio Valley. Again, if we take a look at our instability values here on the GFS, keep in mind this will change, but it kind of gives you a good idea of what areas we are expecting to, I can't speak. Don't clip that. We're expecting to see our main significant severe weather threat over the next couple of weeks. Now, obviously, you need more than just instability to fuel severe thunderstorms, but that's kind of going to give us a good grasp of the areas where we're thinking we're going to have that potential to see severe weather over the next couple of weeks. So, again, you'll kind of notice that as early as the 13th and the 14th out here, we're starting to see a signal pick up in portions of the southern plains and potentially back into parts of the mid-Mississippi Valley for a localized threat of severe weather. Now, again, those instability values aren't everything, but you will note they are quite high back into portions of Missouri, Arkansas, Texas, and Oklahoma, ranging anywhere from 4,000 to 4,500 joules per kilogram at Cape. Now, that will change, but again, worth noting. And as we go into the 15th through the 16th, we're going to be talking about another threat for active severe weather back into portions of the Ohio River Valley. Cape values are going to be ranging anywhere from 3,500 all the way back up to 4,500, anywhere from Nashville, Tennessee, back through the Springfield, Illinois area. Again, instability values are probably going to be much, much different than what we're seeing right now, because we are looking very far out in the GFS model, but still worth noting. As we go into the 16th through the 17th through the 18th, another threat for severe weather becomes apparent across portions of the mid-Mississippi Valley and the southern plains. Again, heightened instability values by a large margin. Now, it's worth noting that pretty much every year we do see this active uptick in severe weather potential across portions of the plains and the Ohio Valley in late May. Last year we saw it. We saw the May 21st event, the May 25th event, and even the May 26th event was pretty impressive. Obviously, the year before that, 2023, kind of had a weird year, but we still did see a heightened corridor of tornadic activity and severe weather in general here across portions of Kansas and Nebraska. In 2023, 2022, we had something very similar. 2021, we had something very similar. And, even some of our historical strongest tornadoes of all time, for example, Gerald, Texas, happened in late May. El Reno happened in late May. You had things like Bridge Creek Moore happen in May. I mean, obviously, we're not going to see, anything like that this year, but it's worth noting whenever we do see that heightened threat for severe weather this time of year, it's something that usually ends up being pretty significant. So if you are out here in the Southern Plains or even portions of the Midwest and Dixie Alley over the next couple of weeks, you do need to be aware that we are going to be talking about a very heightened threat for a couple of tornadoes and potentially even some big-time hail and damaging winds as well. Again, we're very far out as of right now, but I do think that we are going to have quite a significant threat for severe weather, and I wouldn't be shocked if the SPC started to reflect that in some of their day 4 through 8 outlooks here. Peabody, Massachusetts. How's it going, Kevin? Mr. Smarty McSmarty Pants here. Welcome in. Again, rotation starting to become a little bit more intense there and tight north of Pilot Town. Again, this is going to be moving over the Gulf here pretty soon, though, so we're going to be watching for this to kind of move its way out of the Louisiana Bayou very shortly. Again, even this far away from the velocity, even this way far away from the radar, I should say, you can kind of tell that we did have some sort of velocity couplet handoff here. Again, we had this original area of tight rotation that made this get that tornado warning. Then it kind of broadened out a little bit, and then it kind of recycled as it moved past north of Pilot Town there. And again, we're watching that stronger area of velocities just off to the east of Orchard right now. And again, that could be indicative of some very broad rotation. Again, if we look higher up into the atmosphere here, we can see that those velocities are even a little bit more impressive. So it all comes down to, will this translate to the surface? Maybe, maybe not. But again, actually a better way to look at this is by looking at our high-resolution storm relative velocities. You can still see that we do have some broad rotation there, where that green color meets those red pixels. Again, high-resolution storm relative velocities don't necessarily always give you a good idea of the strength of your area of rotation, but it does give you a pretty good idea of how tight it is and where it's at, and especially in a situation like this where we're so far away from the nearest radar site, it's pretty handy. I would like to note, this radar here in southeastern Louisiana was literally just installed last year. Can you imagine covering these bayou events before that radar existed? Well, I can, because I did, and it was not fun. It was not fun whatsoever. So again, those heightened instability values out here in the Florida Panhandle causing some of these supercells to really explode in activity near the Pensacola and Panama City areas. Again, watching some of these to potentially develop some broad rotation over the next couple of hours and potentially try to spin up a brief tornado or at least produce a few large hailstones. So if you are out here anywhere from Tallahassee back over towards, I cannot speak today, Tallahassee back towards Pensacola, make sure that you do have a tornado action plan in place. Did Broyles actually come to Trey's house? That's crazy. But yeah. So again, tornado warning remains in effect here for portions of the bayou for the next couple of minutes. Again, I say next couple of minutes because even though it's technically in effect for another 24 minutes, this area of rotation is going to be moving over the Gulf here pretty shortly, so they're likely going to cancel this. However, you can still note that we do have those elevated velocities there just north of Pilot Town. So if you are in this area, make sure that you are staying in your safe spot. Again, I would not be shocked to see a big-time flash flooding threat ramp up out of this. It's not too uncommon for that to happen in these slow-moving storms along the bayou. You can see that we've already had a few inches of rain accumulate across some of these areas that are going to see even more over the next couple of hours. But yeah. We do not have any storm chasers out there today, unfortunately, because this is a very localized threat in nature for a tornado chance. And again, people don't like chasing down here in the Gulf Coast or in Dixie Alley at all, really, just because of the harsh terrain. But I will note there is an elevated chance of a tornado in general. The reason we don't have chasers out here is just because it's impossible to chase out here, and a lot of them don't live too close to this area. But again, unfortunately, none of our chasers that we do have access to their feeds are out here today. Again, if you are new here, make sure to like and subscribe. We're trying to hit 4,225 subscribers this stream. We're 2 away. We do this every day for areas all across the country. We document historical tornadoes. We cover hurricanes, which is something that we're going to be talking about quite a bit more here soon in the near future. So if you're interested in any of that, make sure to click that like and subscribe button. Again, let's see if we can get this stream to, say, 50 likes. We're at 28 right now. I will note this is a live look here from Browser, Louisiana. Again, this area is currently included in a flash flood warning, and you can see that it is still pouring out here. So again, that's definitely going to lead to the potential for some significant flash flooding out here in this area. We already do have a report of flash flooding from the Youngsville area there. According to the public, minor flooding is currently occurring. That's as of an hour ago, so at this point it's probably quite a bit more intense than that. Again, the storm total precipitation right now is measuring that we have about 3 to 3.5 inches of rain in the downtown Lafayette area that has already fallen, and we're going to continue to see more of that over the next couple of hours. So again, going back over here to our tornado warning storm just south of Venice. Again, okay, they actually literally just canceled that, as we said. So again, at this point, it's an all clear for this region, mainly just because the area of rotation has moved out of the bayou. So we're good at this point. We are going to continue to stay on here, though, covering this threat for a couple of tornadoes back into portions of the Florida Panhandle over the next couple of hours, because I'm not going to lie, I do think that some of these storms do have the potential to explode in intensity here pretty shortly. If not for a tornado threat, at least some large hail. Again, taking a look at the composite reflectivity future track on the HRRR, you can kind of see it having a clustery storm mode here over portions of the Florida Panhandle and far southern Alabama over the next couple of hours. But again, the main thing today is flash flooding. I'm going to continue to say that because I don't think it's being talked about enough, and it really does look to be quite a significant threat of flash flooding as well. Again, especially for areas along the Gulf Coast. But again, right now, no noticeable areas of rotation associated with any of our Florida supercells, but we're going to continue to watch them just in case. Again, the main one that I'd take note of would be the one that just passed through Pensacola near Milton right now. Again, if any of these merge, though, obviously that could enhance the tornado threat with these supercells north of I-10. So we'll continue to watch out for that. Again, we do have a special weather statement north of Apalachicola here for a clustery area of thunderstorms warned for pea-sized hail and damaging winds up to 40 miles an hour. So if you're in this area, make sure you are moving indoors. I will say that these storms are becoming quite heavily electrified as well. So, good chance we see these merge and potentially bring a big-time hail threat. But again, taking a look at those vertically integrated liquid signatures, you can see that they are elevated here, scattered in nature, though, as these are multiple separate supercells rather than one big one. You can kind of see that feature with a lot of our supercells out here in the Florida Panhandle. A lot of these are likely producing anywhere from pea, potentially all the way up to marble-sized hail. So we'll continue to watch out for this. Thank you, Camden. But, again, mainly watching these Florida Panhandle supercells at this point. Again, no noticeable areas of rotation associated with them yet, but I would not be shocked to see that change in this kind of environment where you've got, 3 to 4,000 joules per kilogram of Cape litter today. Right now, it's not quite that high, but it's still pretty impressive. Sitting at about 2,000 right now. So, again, eastern Florida is going to be a threat for later this evening. We don't really have to watch that too closely right now. I will say, though, the fact that we don't have a lot of convection out here means that we're going to likely see heightened instability values later this evening, even further than what we were expecting, because we were expecting a couple of showers and thunder showers to develop out here. It's not happening, which, again, you would think, okay, that's a good thing, but actually what that's going to do is that's going to allow the sun here to shine back onto the surface here in portions of the east coast of Florida, and that actually raises your instability in the lower levels of the atmosphere quite a bit. And that could potentially lead to the storms that we end up seeing later this evening being even more intense than what we were expecting. Again, SRH values are going to be quite elevated out here, obviously, later this evening as well, but not super intense, as our wind shear isn't quite as impressive as we would want it to be for any sort of major tornado threat, but you will note they are definitely elevated across the east coast of Florida, obviously, especially over areas where we see those supercells develop. But yeah, I will note, look at this, you've got your SRH values out here in New England, because of all that heavy convection, you got them sitting anywhere from 800 to 900 today. It's kind of hilarious. But yeah. So again, if you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe. Again, right now, watching any of these supercells that do try to develop some rotation back into portions of the Florida Panhandle, and also watching a pretty significant flash flooding threat develop back here into sections of southern Louisiana and southern Mississippi now. But I don't think we're going to need to be here for too much longer. This was kind of just a brief emergency update. Again, I do want to give a huge thank you to Beth for the $50 donation, because that's incredible. I'm not streaming in school, no. But, again, if Beth is still here, thank you so much for the $50 donation. That's incredible. Again, donations are completely optional, but I really do appreciate the folks that do go above and beyond and decide to donate, especially to that degree. Again, any amount is obviously highly appreciated, because it's not necessary whatsoever, but, I mean, that's just incredible. So, I would like to note, we do have this little guy here now. We have a nice little GoPro. So, whenever we do see some intense, severe thunderstorms out here in this area, hopefully we can get some more high-quality footage for you guys. The main thing that I don't like about the iPhone cameras is that they can only capture up to 60 frames per second, which isn't always enough whenever you want to get some cool shots of lightning. No, this is actually a hurricane t-shirt. I'm prepared for hurricane season, okay? But yeah, it definitely looks like a Supercell t-shirt. I'll tell you what, though. I did get this from ShopRite Hall, so. But yeah. Again, the main thing I don't like about the iPhone camera, because it is incredible. It's amazing, because 10 years ago on an iPhone, you wouldn't even imagine that would ever be a possibility, what we see now. But the main thing that is kind of lacking with it is the FPS. You can only shoot up to 60 FPS, but the GoPro here can do quite a bit higher than that, so that's pretty cool. I believe you can go up to 120 if I'm not mistaken, maybe even a little higher. Let me see. Oh, accidentally turned it off. Still getting used to some of the controls here. But yeah, moral of the story is, hopefully we can get some better storm footage for you guys over the next couple of months. Here we go. So yeah, depending on what resolution you can choose, you can do all the way up to 240 FPS, which is insane. But that comes with a couple of caveats. Again, you have to do just, I think you have to do 720p quality if you want 120 FPS, if I'm not mistaken. But the settings I'm kind of rolling with is 1440p, 80 FPS, because it still looks very smooth, and then you also get heightened frames, which, again, doesn't really matter in most situations, but obviously for capturing lightning and stuff like that, it's going to be pretty handy. So, just thought I'd point that out. Oh, nope, want to turn it off. There we go. But yeah. So, again, at this point, mainly just kind of watching these Florida supercells, probably going to wrap things up here pretty shortly. Just because there's not a whole lot going on right now. I would like to point out we could see some merging with these cluster A thunderstorms over here just south of Mariana, and that could potentially lead to an elevated tornado threat, or at least a high-end hail threat for parts of I-10 pretty shortly. But I am already locked in, indeed, Fred. Indeed. I gotta say, it would be a dream one day to intercept a hurricane. I think that's probably going to be one of my goals, is to be not just a storm chaser, but a hurricane chaser, because we don't have a lot of folks that like to go out there and do that, just because a hurricane obviously brings a certain level of danger. But as long as you play it safe and smart, then you're going to be A-okay. But yeah. So again, at this point, probably going to be able to wrap things up pretty shortly. Again, just one last huge shout out to Beth for the $50 donation. That is incredible. Again, that is very, very generous. Before we do hop off, I think we should probably go back over our severe weather threat as we go into next week. One last little time here. So, again, we're not forecasting localized areas here before anybody asks for their specific location, because we genuinely are just now starting to get enough information that this is even going to happen, that there's going to be an elevated threat for a couple of tornadoes as we go into next week. So we're not going to really be talking about specific areas too much, but again, as we go into next week, specifically the 17th and the 18th look very impressive to me. Several other days as well, though, even this week, or I guess technically next week still, but next Friday, we could be talking about an elevated threat for a couple of tornadoes back into portions of the Midwest. Big time surge of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, as well as a very, very nice jet stream that's going to allow us to see heightened severe weather potential across a huge chunk of the United States. I will say, even if this doesn't end up being the most intense stretch of severe weather of the year, it will definitely be the most widespread, just because it is not common at all to see, 20 states be under the gun for a significant tornado threat in one day, but that's going to be what's happening here in some of these instances. Again, you'll notice here, again, very, very far out, this is going to change quite a bit, but heightened instability values across parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, Illinois, Alabama, Missouri, Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Kansas, Iowa, Nebraska, all at the same time, and then you're also going to have decent wind shear values most likely across all those areas as well. This is the bulk shear at the 500 millibar level. I mean, this is going to be a very, very heightened threat for severe weather over a huge area, without a shadow of a doubt. So, again, make sure you are on the lookout here over the next couple of weeks. Again, this is going to be probably the most intense stretch of severe weather of the year, in my opinion. But again, even if it's not, it will be it will be very widespread. But yeah. One other thing I would like to note here, if we go to the Tornadoes of 2025 Wikipedia page, you'll notice that comparing 2025 to previous years, we are well above average. The only year that has been more intense within the past decade and a half than this year was 2011. So, definitely pretty scary to see. Obviously, that has time to change. You'll notice, again, a lot of these little charts here, they start to have that huge spike there in May, and that's what we're expecting to happen here. So, again, good chance that we are going to be seeing a very, very active year for severe weather for the rest of the spring and even into the early portions of summer. Again, we've already seen almost 600 tornadoes this year thus far, which is unbelievable. Again, actually, if we go back over to our severe weather season forecast, though, for the entirety of 2025, you'll notice that we did a pretty good job. This was our overall 2025 severe weather season forecast. Let me bring this up really quickly. My goodness. We had well above average across Dixie Alley, slightly above average across the Plains and Midwest, slightly below average across the Pacific Northwest, average across the Desert Southwest, and a wild card across the Northeast. All of this has played out. So again, not to toot my own horn or anything, but this aged beautifully. I mean, I'm very glad that I made the decision to upload this video, because at first I was thinking about not even doing it. Not only did it perform very well and you guys really enjoyed it, but it was also accurate, which is the most important thing to me. But again, very, very proud, considering that this was the first year I did a full range, entire year severe weather season forecast, and it's playing out this amazingly. We still have to kind of wait for the Desert Southwest, just because obviously monsoon season hasn't even started yet. So there's still time for the average prediction to be incorrect, but thus far, very happy with what we've managed to do here. So anyway, I think that's going to be it for this video, or this live stream rather. If you guys did enjoy, make sure to like and subscribe. Again, we will be back tomorrow once again. Trying to think if there's anything else that I need to say here before we wrap up. There's a chance that we're going to be back later today if anything does happen in the peninsula of Florida. Again, a heightened threat for a couple of tornadoes, kind of going to be from 3 to 6 p.m. or so. So we'll watch out for that. But outside of that, Again, thank you all for tuning in. They did go ahead and special weather statement warn our cluster of storms here south of New Orleans. I'm going to guess it's probably for 40-mile-an-hour winds in Pea-Sizedale. Water spouts and winds in excess of 40 miles an hour. Yeah, so obviously something to note. You're going to have that potential for a couple of water spouts since this is a very, very swampy area. So again, obviously try to avoid doing anything out over open waters here today. Not only is there going to be that threat for water spouts, but also lightning can be a big hazard. But yeah, that's it for today. So thank you all for tuning in. I'll see you guys all in the next one. Stay safe.